She did that in Lake Louise, and then she did it again here.
And looked around and said, wow, it looks like a Dutch person designed this oval.
Top 10 Unbreakable Winter Olympics Records. Some Olympic records are impressive, others are dominant, and then there are a few that feel almost impossible. These aren't just moments where an athlete won gold. They're moments where the laws of probability, physiology, and competition seem to bend, if only briefly. The Winter Olympics are designed to reward marginal gains. Victories are usually decided by hundredths of a second. One slip, one mistake, one missed shot, and a lifetime of preparation disappears. That's what makes these records so unsettling. Because in each of these cases, the margin wasn't small, the dominance wasn't normal, and the achievement wasn't supposed to happen, at least not in the modern era. These are performances that crushed entire fields, streaks that outlived generations of competitors, and feats so extreme that even today's perfectly optimized athletes can only stare at them in disbelief. Some required superhuman consistency, some demanded versatility that modern sport no longer allows, and others were so overwhelming that they rewrote what we believed was physically possible on ice and snow. We're not talking about records protected by rule changes or technical loopholes. These are records that could be broken, in theory, but in reality, they stand untouched, daring the future to try. Because to break them, you wouldn't just need talent. You'd need perfect timing, perfect conditions, and an athlete willing to redefine the limits of the human body. These are the most extraordinary Winter Olympic records ever set, and the reason many of them may never fall. The Winter Olympics are built on margins so small they're almost invisible. Hundredths of a second, a single wobble, one missed breath. That's usually all that separates gold from anonymity, which is why the records in this list feel so unnatural. They aren't just wins, they're obliterations. Moments where dominance went so far beyond expectation that even decades later, experts struggle to explain how they happened, let alone how they could ever be repeated. We begin with a display of national supremacy so extreme it bordered on parody. Number 10. The Dutch Speed Skating Podium Sweeps, Sochi, 2014. Kicking off the list at number 10 is a performance that redefined what dominance looks like at the Winter Olympics. At the 2014 Sochi Games, the Netherlands didn't just excel in speed skating, they owned it. Speed skating has long been the Dutch national obsession. The country's canals freeze in winter, and skating is woven into its cultural identity. But even with that background, what happened in Sochi stunned the sporting world. The Dutch team achieved 4 separate podium sweeps. That means gold, silver, and bronze, all taken by athletes from the same country, in 4 different speed skating events. In the modern Olympics, this is almost impossible. Countries are strictly limited in how many athletes they can send per event, usually capped at 3. To sweep a podium, a nation doesn't just need elite athletes, it needs perfection. Every skater must perform flawlessly. No falls, no bad races, no surprises. Now do that once, and it's remarkable. Do it 4 times in a single Olympics, and it becomes a statistical anomaly. By the end of the Games, the Netherlands had collected 23 medals in speed skating alone, the highest medal total by any nation in a single discipline in Winter Olympic history. Other teams reportedly walked into the skating oval and joked that it looked like a Dutch-designed arena, because it may as well have been home ice. What makes this record so difficult to break is globalization. Speed skating is no longer dominated by one nation. Training methods, technology, and talent pools have spread worldwide. Today, competition is deeper and more balanced than ever. A single podium sweep would be shocking now. 4? Almost unthinkable. Number 9. Armin Zöggeler's 6 Olympics medal streak. At number 9 is a record built not on domination in one moment, but on refusing to fade with time. Luge is a sport measured in thousandths of a second. One mistimed lean, one overcorrection, and your run is over. Reflexes matter, precision matters, and age is usually unforgiving, which makes Armin Zöggeler's career almost absurd. The Italian luger earned a medal in 6 consecutive Winter Olympics, spanning from Lillehammer in 1994 all the way to Sochi in 2014. That's 20 years on the Olympic podium. Nicknamed the Cannibal in Italy for devouring the competition, Zöggeler wasn't just hanging on, he was contending at the highest level against athletes half his age. Human reaction time naturally slows with age. Muscle recovery takes longer. Risk tolerance changes. In luge, where speeds exceed 140 kilometers per hour and mistakes are brutal, these factors usually end careers early. Zöggeler ignored all of that. Even at age 40, he was still among the 3 fastest men on ice in the world. To maintain Olympic-level precision, courage, and mental focus across 6 games defies everything we understand about athletic shelf life. Modern athletes struggle to remain competitive across 2 Olympics. Zöggeler did it across 6. Consistency like that doesn't just require talent. It requires obsession, discipline, and a body that refuses to obey time. And that's why this streak stands as one of the most durable records in Winter Olympic history. Number 8. Marit Bjørgen's 15 career Winter Olympic medals. At number 8 is a record so massive it feels untouchable. Marit Bjørgen is not just the most decorated cross-country skier of all time, she is the most decorated Winter Olympian in history. By the time she retired after the 2018 Games, Bjørgen had amassed 15 Olympic medals, including 8 golds, across 5 different Winter Olympics. Cross-country skiing is one of the most physically punishing sports on Earth. It demands endurance, power, balance, and mental resilience across events that range from explosive sprints to brutal long-distance races. Most athletes specialize. Bjørgen dominated everything. To even approach her medal count, a modern athlete would need extraordinary versatility, near-perfect health, and a career spanning over 16 years at the absolute peak of global competition. And that's assuming no injuries, no burnout, and no generational rivals. The sport itself makes this record nearly impossible to touch. Advances in training have increased intensity, but they've also shortened careers. The physical toll is immense. Few athletes last more than 2 or 3 Olympic cycles at the top. Bjørgen lasted 5. She didn't just win medals, she outlasted eras. Her 15-medal haul isn't just a record, it's a monument to durability in a sport designed to break even the strongest athletes. As we move further up this list, the records stop being about longevity or national dominance and start entering a new category entirely: perfection, versatility, and feats so extreme they challenge the limits of modern sport itself. And next, we reach an athlete who didn't just win, she never lost. As we move higher on this list, the records stop being about national dominance or long careers. What comes next is far more fragile: perfection, versatility, and margins so extreme that modern sport almost refuses to allow them. These are achievements that survived not because athletes were lucky, but because they were unrepeatable. Number 7. Irina Rodnina's decade of perfection. At number 7 is a record built not just on winning, but on never losing. Figure skating is one of the most unforgiving sports in the Winter Olympics. One mistimed jump, one shaky landing, or one controversial judging decision can end a career-defining run in seconds. The margin for error is microscopic, and the judging is inherently subjective. Unless you're Irina Rodnina. Competing for the Soviet Union, Rodnina dominated pairs figure skating like no one before or since. From 1972 to 1980, she won 3 consecutive Olympic gold medals. But that alone isn't what makes her record so difficult to break. What makes it nearly impossible is this: for 11 straight years, across World Championships and Olympic Games, Rodnina never lost a single competition. Not once. Even more astonishing, she achieved this while changing partners mid-career, a transition that normally destroys momentum and chemistry in pairs skating. Instead of slowing her down, it barely registered. During that era, Rodnina and her partners weren't just winning, they were untouchable. Judges, rivals, and audiences all entered competitions assuming the gold medal was already decided. In modern figure skating, this kind of dominance is almost unthinkable. The technical difficulty has skyrocketed. Athletes push their bodies harder than ever, leading to shorter careers and more frequent injuries. Most elite skaters retire in their mid-20s. Rodnina sustained perfection for more than a decade. It wasn't just skill, it was mental invincibility. And that's why her streak stands as one of the most untouchable records the Winter Olympics have ever seen. Number 6. Eddie Egan's Summer and Winter Olympic Golds. At number 6 is a record that modern sport has all but erased the possibility of repeating. Eddie Egan remains the only athlete in history to win Olympic gold medals in both the Summer and Winter Games, in completely different sports. In 1920, Egan claimed gold in boxing, winning the light heavyweight title at the Antwerp Summer Olympics. Boxing demands speed, aggression, timing, and explosive power. 12 years later, in 1932, he returned to the Olympics, not with gloves, but with a helmet, as part of the U.S. four-man bobsled team at the Winter Games in Lake Placid. He won gold again. In today's hyper-specialized sports world, this sounds almost impossible, and that's because it is. Modern athletes train from childhood for a single discipline. Even switching positions within the same sport is rare, let alone switching seasons and skill sets entirely. While a handful of modern athletes have competed in both Summer and Winter Olympics, none have won gold in two different sports. Egan's achievement belongs to a bygone era, before specialization hardened the boundaries of human performance. Today, no athlete could realistically train at an elite level in both boxing and bobsledding without sacrificing one for the other. That's what makes his record so secure. It doesn't just defy competition, it defies the way modern sport works. Number 5. Tony Saylor's 6.2-second alpine skiing blowout. At number 5 is a margin of victory so large that it feels almost fictional by modern standards. At the 1956 Winter Olympics in Cortina d'Ampezzo, Austrian skier Tony Saylor, nicknamed the Blitz from Kits, dominated alpine skiing in a way no one ever has since. Saylor won all three alpine events, downhill, slalom, and giant slalom. But it was his giant slalom victory that bordered on absurd. He beat the silver medalist by 6.2 seconds. To put that into perspective, in modern Olympic alpine skiing, the top 30 racers often finish within 2 seconds of each other. Victories are frequently decided by hundredths of a second. Saylor wasn't just faster, he was skiing in a different era of technique. While many of his competitors were still relying on outdated turning methods, Saylor had already mastered parallel skiing, a technique that allowed smoother, faster, more controlled descents. He wasn't just better trained, he was ahead of the sport itself. Today, training is optimized to the extreme. Equipment is standardized. Course preparation is precise. Athletes analyze every movement down to milliseconds. A 6-second victory margin today would require catastrophic failure from the entire field. Saylor's dominance wasn't just athletic, it was evolutionary. And that's why this record belongs to history, not the future. As the countdown continues, the records become even harder to explain. The next entries aren't just about dominance or versatility. They're about performances so overwhelming that they shattered modern expectations entirely. These are moments where optimized athletes were left behind, and where science struggled to keep up. At this stage in the countdown, the records stop being about domination within the rules of a sport, and start looking like glitches in the system itself. These are performances that didn't just win gold. They redefined the ceiling of what elite athletes were supposed to be capable of in the modern era. Sports science, data analysis, and marginal gains exist specifically to prevent gaps like these. And yet, they happened anyway. Number 4. Nils van der Poel's 10,000-meter annihilation, Beijing 2022. At number 4 is a race so brutal, so lopsided, that it left experts searching for explanations long after the finish line. The 10,000 meters in speed skating is not supposed to produce blowouts. It's a grinding endurance event where pacing, drafting, and efficiency matter more than raw speed. Victories are usually decided in the final laps, sometimes by tenths of a second. Then came Nils van der Poel. At the 2022 Winter Olympics in Beijing, The Swedish skater didn't just win the 10,000 meters, he obliterated the field. When he crossed the finish line, he was nearly 14 seconds ahead of the silver medalist. 14 seconds. In elite speed skating, that margin is absurd. To put it in context, modern races at this level are often decided by less than a second. Van der Poel didn't just break the Olympic record, he broke the spirit of the competition. Rivals skated against the clock, knowing the race was already lost. What made the performance even more unsettling was what came next. After the Games, Van der Poel released a detailed training manifesto outlining his preparation. Instead of relying on traditional skating-heavy programs, he focused intensely on ultra-distance endurance, high-volume aerobic work, and unconventional recovery habits, including famously casual references to eating ice cream. Sports physiologists were stunned. His methods contradicted many accepted norms of elite training. And yet, the results were undeniable. Against a field of fully optimized, data-driven professionals, Van der Poel created a gap so large it suggested he had briefly stepped outside the known limits of human endurance. Records like this are supposed to get harder to break over time. This one looks untouchable the moment it was set. Number 3. Ester Ledecka's dual sport gold miracle. Pyeongchang 2018. At number 3 is a feat so unlikely that even the athlete who achieved it couldn't believe what she was seeing. Ester Ledecka arrived at the 2018 Winter Olympics as a snowboarder. That was her identity. That was her focus. Skiing, while something she trained in, was not where expectations lay. Then came the Super G. In one of the most shocking moments in Olympic history, Ledecka borrowed skis, entered the alpine skiing Super G, and won gold. By 1/100th of a second. Her reaction said everything. Instead of celebrating immediately, she stared at the scoreboard in confusion, clearly convinced there had been a mistake. No one, including her, expected that result. And then, just days later, she did something even more absurd. She returned to snowboarding and won another gold medal in the parallel giant slalom. 2 gold medals, 2 different sports, 1 Olympics. This had never happened before, and for good reason. Alpine skiing and snowboarding require completely different muscle memory, balance systems, and training schedules. Coaches actively discourage athletes from attempting both because mastering one usually compromises the other. Ledecka didn't compromise. She conquered both. From a logistical standpoint alone, the feat borders on impossible. Managing equipment, training regimens, and recovery for 2 separate sports during the same Olympic Games is a nightmare. Add the mental pressure of competition at that level, and the achievement becomes almost surreal. That's why this record is so secure. Modern athletes are specialized to an extreme degree. The era of crossover dominance is essentially gone. Ledecka didn't just defy expectations. She broke a rule the sporting world didn't even realize it had written. Athletes aren't supposed to do this. And that's exactly why it worked. At this point, the pattern is undeniable. These records weren't set because athletes were slightly better than their rivals. They were set because something aligned perfectly: talent, timing, preparation, and opportunity, in ways that may never align again. Which brings us to the final stretch. The last 2 records aren't just impressive, they're mythical. One represents perfection in chaos. The other represents dominance across every possible dimension of a sport. And once you reach that level, the question isn't, can these records be broken? It's whether the human body will ever allow it. At the very top of this list, we leave behind dominance measured in seconds or medals. What remains are records so complete, so overwhelming, that they feel less like athletic achievements and more like historical anomalies. These are the kinds of performances that don't just win events. They rewrite what a sport believes is possible. Number 2. Ole Einar Bjørndalen's biathlon sweep. Salt Lake City, 2002. At number 2 is a record achieved in one of the cruelest, most unpredictable sports in the Winter Olympics. Biathlon is a contradiction by design. Athletes must ski at near maximum intensity until their hearts are pounding out of their chests, then immediately stop, control their breathing, steady trembling hands, and hit tiny targets with a rifle. One missed shot means penalty loops. One bad round erases minutes of hard work. It is a sport built on chaos. And that's what makes Ole Einar Bjørndalen's performance at the 2002 Salt Lake City Games so staggering. Bjørndalen didn't just win an event, he won everything. He captured gold in the sprint, the pursuit, the individual race, and the relay. A perfect 4-for-4 sweep across every biathlon format contested at those games. In a sport where a single missed target can destroy a medal chance, Bjørndalen was flawless across speed, endurance, accuracy, and teamwork. Statistically, this kind of dominance is almost absurd. Experts have compared it to a golfer hitting a hole-in-one 4 days in a row, while competing against the best players in the world. The margins are simply too thin, the variables too many. Even Bjørndalen himself later described it as a moment where everything aligned perfectly: preparation, confidence, conditions, and instinct. The modern biathlon field is deeper than ever. Training methods are globalized. Equipment is optimized. Margins are microscopic. That level of perfection across all formats is no longer realistic. Bjørndalen's sweep wasn't just mastery. It was lightning in a bottle. Number 1. Eric Heiden's impossible 5-gold sweep. Lake Placid, 1980. At number 1 is a record so extreme that it defies human biology. At the 1980 Winter Olympics in Lake Placid, Eric Heiden accomplished something no one before or since has even come close to replicating. He won 5 individual gold medals in speed skating. Not 5 medals across similar distances, 5 medals across the entire spectrum of the sport. Heiden won the 500 meters, a pure sprint. He won the 10,000 meters, an endurance grind. And he won everything in between. Even more astonishing, he set a new Olympic record in every single race. To understand why this record is untouchable, you have to understand modern sports skating. Sprint speed skating relies on explosive, fast-twitch muscle fibers. Endurance events depend on slow-twitch fibers, oxygen efficiency, and energy conservation. Training one usually compromises the other. That's why modern skaters specialize. They have to. Eric Heiden didn't. At Lake Placid, he reduced an entire Olympic sport to something that looked almost private, as if the competition existed solely for him to demonstrate his range. While much of America was focused on the Miracle on Ice hockey team, Heiden was quietly producing one of the greatest individual performances in Olympic history. No athlete has ever matched it. No athlete is even attempting to. Because to do so would require a body capable of being the fastest sprinter and the strongest endurance athlete on ice simultaneously. That combination shouldn't exist. And yet, for one Olympic Games, it did. That's why Eric Heiden's sweep doesn't just top this list. It closes it. Looking back at all these records, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. The Winter Olympics are designed to eliminate dominance. Rules evolve. Technology advances. Competition deepens. And yet, every once in a while, an athlete or a team breaks through all of that. Not by a margin, but by a chasm. These records didn't survive because no one tried to beat them. They survived because the conditions that created them may never exist again. Some required superhuman consistency. Some demanded versatility modern sport no longer allows. Others were so overwhelming they felt like errors in the system. And that's why they endure. Not as numbers in a record book, but as reminders that, occasionally, human potential escapes its limits. Do you think any of these records will ever be broken? Let us know what you think in the comments. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Olympic history, like the video, share it with a fellow sports fan, and subscribe for more stories that explore the moments when athletes didn't just compete, they transcended. Because records can be beaten, but legends like these are built to last forever.